We've all met them, the people who turn small inconveniences into full-blown confrontations. But sometimes those moments spiral into something far darker. In this video, we're uncovering 6 Karens that died in the dumbest ways ever. It was May 18th, 2014. The suburban streets of Western Sydney were quiet under a moonless sky. Kara Minton, a 41-year-old self-employed pet groomer, stood at the edge of her neighbor's property line, studying the layout through the wooden fence. Kara ran a small grooming business from her garage, servicing local dogs and cats for modest fees. Neighbors described her as abrasive and territorial, particularly regarding animals. Her property bordered a residential wildlife rehabilitation facility operated under state licensing, where injured native animals received long-term care before potential release. Kara had openly complained to the local council multiple times about the presence of bats, claiming they attracted vermin and damaged property values. Her complaints were dismissed as the facility operated legally with proper permits. For 6 months, Kara illegally set cage traps and poisoned food along the fence, targeting cats that strayed during enrichment. After 3 cats vanished over 4 months, the operator installed infrared CCTV, which captured Kara entering the property twice to retrieve the traps she'd placed inside the boundary. On this particular night, Kara likely noticed one of the cameras repositioned to cover her side of the fence. Rather than cease her activities, she seemed to have decided to remove the device entirely. She waited until after midnight. The facility had posted visible biosecurity warnings about handling wildlife and the risks of Lissa virus transmission from bats, and staff were vaccinated and required to use protective gloves and barriers when handling flying foxes. But Kara had never read them. At approximately 1 in the morning, Kara climbed the fence using a stepladder. The CCTV unit recorded her dropping into the yard and moving toward the device mounted on a post. She miscalculated her path in the darkness, stumbling through a maintenance gate that had been left unsecured into an enclosed recovery area. This section housed non-releasable wildlife requiring permanent care, including a gray-headed flying fox with a damaged wing that had been undergoing rehabilitation for 8 months. The startled bat, confined to a large mesh enclosure that Kara had torn open while trying to steady herself, reacted defensively when its enclosure was breached. It bit her right hand twice before she could pull away. Video footage showed Kara clutching her hand and scrambling backward, while audio from a nearby residential CCTV system captured her screaming. She fled back over the fence. The facility operator discovered the intrusion at 6:30 in the morning and immediately reported it to police, providing the original recording media as evidence. Police visited Kara that afternoon. She admitted to trespassing but insisted she was fine, refusing advice to immediately wash the wounds thoroughly and seek hospital care for post-exposure vaccination. She said she cleaned the wounds herself with household antiseptic. Over the following 3 to 4 weeks, Kara likely developed progressive confusion, anxiety, and difficulty swallowing. By the 5th week, she experienced painful muscle spasms and paralysis. Her sister found her collapsed at home on June 16th and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived immediately, but Kara died in intensive care 2 days later, despite aggressive supportive treatment. The autopsy confirmed death from Australian bat Lissa virus infection, a fatal neurological disease transmitted through bat bites. The coroner's report noted that while incubation is often measured in months, it can be far shorter, and that immediate post-exposure prophylaxis would have prevented death. But Kara's refusal of medical care eliminated that possibility. The facility operator faced no charges. Kara's estate was fined for illegal wildlife interference and trespassing. It was October 4th, 2015. The afternoon sun beat down on an elementary school's parking lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where colorful booths and inflatable structures dotted the asphalt for the annual fall fair. Among the families navigating the carnival games stood Denise Calder, a 36-year-old part-time bookkeeper whose presence would turn an ordinary school fundraiser into a scene of unforgettable tragedy. Denise had worked sporadically for various small businesses around Albuquerque, never holding a position for too long. Co-workers described her as competent with numbers but volatile under pressure, prone to outbursts over minor workplace conflicts. She had been fired twice for confrontations with management. Her 8-year-old son Tyler was her primary focus, and she attended his school events religiously. often volunteering with an intensity that made other parents uncomfortable. The school fair featured typical attractions including ring toss booths, face painting stations, and several large inflatable structures powered by industrial fans. These inflatables, standing between 10 and 15 feet tall, were kept inflated by weighted metal fan units that maintained constant air pressure. Each fan base weighed approximately 60 pounds and was fitted with a heavy-gauge steel housing around the motor. Manufacturer guidance and event protocols required additional anchoring or sandbag weights on asphalt surfaces, but that day organizers relied only on the weight of the base. Tyler had been playing a ring toss game at a booth run by parent volunteers, attempting to land plastic rings on glass bottles for prizes. After multiple failed attempts and $5 spent, he walked away empty-handed and visibly upset. Denise approached the booth demanding another chance, her voice rising as she accused the volunteers of rigging the game. When they politely refused, explaining the rules applied equally to everyone, her agitation escalated. Rather than walking away, Denise pivoted toward the nearest inflatable structure, a 12-foot giraffe-shaped bounce house positioned adjacent to the game booth. Several children were playing inside as she reached the inflatable and grabbed the vinyl material with both hands. Witnesses reported she appeared to be attempting to forcefully pull it down or tip it over. The structure's tethered connection to its fan base created resistance, but Denise continued jerking the inflatable violently back and forth. The weighted fan base, sitting unsecured on the asphalt and lacking the recommended sandbag weights, began rocking with each pull. On Denise's fourth or fifth violent shake, the 60-pound metal unit tipped forward completely. The steel housing pivoted and struck her left temple with concentrated force as she leaned into another pull. She dropped instantly, her body crumpling onto the hot asphalt. Witnesses reported no movement from Denise after she fell. Children who had been playing inside the inflatable were pulled away by parents, many screaming. A volunteer called 911, and emergency medical services found Denise unresponsive with visible trauma to her head. Despite immediate intervention, she was pronounced dead at the scene minutes later. The medical examiner confirmed a depressed skull fracture with brain herniation, consistent with catastrophic blunt force trauma. The manner of death was ruled accidental, with investigators noting that the fatal injury occurred during her deliberate attempt to overturn the inflatable structure. The funeral was sparsely attended, with Tyler placed temporarily with Denise's sister in Las Cruces before entering long-term foster care. The elementary school removed all large inflatable structures from subsequent fairs, implemented a permanent ban on fan-powered attractions, and opened an internal safety review with the district insurer. It was January 22, 2017. A popular downtown Toronto coffee shop buzzed with Sunday afternoon traffic, voices overlapping beneath the hiss of the espresso machine. Nina Tremblay sat across from Samir Hassan at a small corner table, arms folded, coffee untouched. Mid-complaint, another routine confrontation in a life shaped by friction, unaware it would be the last one she ever made. Nina had graduated 4 years earlier with a marketing degree from a mid-tier Ontario college, but chronic workplace conflicts had left her cycling through temp jobs and retail positions. Friends described her as intelligent but combative. She'd been fired 3 times in 2 years, always insisting she was standing up for herself against disrespect. Samir, a junior accountant she'd matched with on a dating app, knew none of this background when he suggested meeting at the coffee shop near his condo. The date had started awkwardly. Nina complained about the lighting, the music volume, and the chair wobbling. 15 minutes in, she marched to the counter, demanding a refund because the drink was supposedly lukewarm. The barista politely offered to remake it, explaining the thermometer showed all drinks left the machine at proper temperature. Nina's voice rose. She insisted the temperature was unacceptable and demanded her money back immediately. The shift supervisor, trained in de-escalation, calmly refused the refund, but again offered a fresh drink at no charge. Nina's face flushed red. She grabbed a freshly prepared drink waiting on the pickup counter, a scalding beverage just pulled from the espresso machine, and deliberately dumped the entire contents across the polished marble floor while shouting about customer service. Other patrons backed away as the steaming liquid spread rapidly across the reflective surface. The supervisor immediately reached for the phone to call 911, while another employee moved toward the counter area. Nina continued her tirade. She gestured wildly, her attention focused entirely on the staff behind the counter. Still yelling, she took 3 aggressive steps backward toward her table where Samir sat frozen with embarrassment. Her left boot slid forward as it hit the expanding pool of coffee. The liquid had reduced surface friction to nearly nothing on the polished marble. Nina's legs shot forward as her center of mass pitched backward. She fell with full body weight, her trajectory carrying her backward at an angle. The base of her skull struck the exposed stainless steel corner of a refrigerated display case with devastating force. Witnesses later described a sharp, sickening crack that echoed across the shop. Nina's body went instantly limp, her eyes open but unseeing. Blood pooled rapidly beneath her head, spreading across the floor. A customer with nursing experience checked for breathing and found none, immediately calling emergency services. When paramedics arrived at the coffee shop, Nina had no pulse and was not breathing, and attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. A later examination by the coroner confirmed she had suffered a severe fracture at the base of her skull, which caused critical damage to the part of the brain responsible for breathing and heart function, making it clear that the injury shut down her body almost immediately and left no chance of survival. Investigators reviewed statements from multiple witnesses and determined the death was accidental, resulting directly from Nina's own reckless behavior. No charges were filed against the coffee shop or staff. Samir provided a written statement describing Nina's escalating aggression throughout their brief date, which corroborated the evidence. The criminal investigation concluded within 2 weeks, with the coroner's formal report issued afterward, closing the case without further action. It was July 29, 2018. The evening air in Great Smoky Mountains National Park near Gatlinburg, Tennessee, hung thick and humid as campers settled into their sites along the wooded campground. Lacey Lee Turner, a 33-year-old retail worker from Knoxville, stood beside her sedan with her phone positioned on the hood, preparing to capture what she hoped would be her viral breakthrough. The black bear she had been baiting for 3 consecutive nights now lingered just 15 feet away, drawn by the scent of food she had deliberately scattered. At work, Lacey was known for arguing with supervisors, demanding policy exceptions, and escalating minor disagreements into formal complaints. Co-workers described her as someone who routinely asked to speak to managers and threatened to go corporate when she felt disrespected. That same combative personality carried into her online life. She spent most of her off hours cultivating a social media presence built around outrage, entitlement, and defiance, framing herself as someone who stood up to authority. By 2018, she had accumulated roughly 2,400 followers by posting wildlife encounter content from repeated camping trips to the Smokies, often pairing the clips with captions mocking rules, experts, and critics who warned her to stop. The Smoky Mountains host approximately 1,500 black bears across 500,000 acres of protected wilderness. Park regulations strictly prohibit feeding wildlife or storing food improperly, as habituated bears become dangerous and often must be euthanized. Rangers had cited Lacey twice that week for leaving coolers and food scraps outside her tent, warning her that attracting bears was illegal and potentially fatal, and that fed bears are frequently destroyed for public safety. She dismissed their concerns, posting photos of the citations with mocking captions about overprotective authorities. That evening, Lacey had escalated her baiting strategy. She spread honey-coated granola bars in a deliberate trail leading from the tree line to her campsite. A roughly 300-pound adult male black bear followed the scent trail as darkness approached. When the bear reached her immediate area, Lacey grabbed a long stick she had coated with honey and peanut butter, stepping directly into the animal's path. Multiple campers from adjacent sites watched with growing alarm as Lacey cornered the bear between her vehicle and a large oak tree, waving the stick while her phone recorded from a fixed angle atop the car hood. The bear displayed obvious stress signals, making huffing sounds and swaying its head while shifting its weight and hesitating. Lacey moved closer, extending the stick toward the animal's face. 2 campers began shouting warnings, but she ignored them completely. The bear struck suddenly, moving with startling speed for its size. It rose briefly on its hind legs in a reflexive motion, then swiped with its right paw, connecting with Lacey's neck and upper chest before driving her sideways into her car door. She collapsed onto the gravel campsite, Blood poured from ragged lacerations across her throat and shoulder, and the bear immediately fled into the forest after the initial contact. The nearest camper, a retired firefighter, reached Lacey within seconds and attempted to control the bleeding using a towel, but the neck wounds were catastrophic. His wife called emergency services at 7:43 p.m., while other campers ran to alert park staff. Park rangers arrived 14 minutes later, followed by paramedics who transported Lacey to a regional medical center. She was pronounced dead at 8:34 p.m. The medical examiner determined death resulted from massive trauma to the neck, causing complete airway collapse and severe blood loss from severed arteries. Park officials tracked and located the bear in the surrounding area, euthanizing it 2 days later after linking it to the incident through investigative findings that included DNA recovered from the scene. Lacey's phone footage was secured and forensically copied by park authorities as part of the investigative record, never released publicly. It was February 11, 2016. The morning heat in suburban Brisbane, Queensland, was already climbing past 82 degrees Fahrenheit by 10 o'clock. Tanya Rowe, a 39-year-old casual cleaner living in a weatherboard rental property on the city's western fringe, stood in her backyard staring at the wooden utility pole that serviced her block. Tanya worked irregular shifts cleaning offices and retail spaces across Brisbane. Friends described her as fiercely independent, but increasingly paranoid about corporations and government agencies. She spent hours each day on local community Facebook groups and neighborhood forums, posting lengthy complaints about utility bills and demanding immediate refunds. Tanya had a knack for escalating small disputes into public spectacles. She routinely tagged counselors in her posts, left scathing one-star reviews, and threatened media exposure if she wasn't placated. Her online behavior, frequent public shaming, blunt private messages to neighbors who disagreed, and recorded phone calls she posted as proof of harassment, had earned her a reputation around the block as the person who never let a grievance go. This distrust had hardened over years of financial struggles and mounting debts. Electrical service poles carry high-voltage distribution lines that step down power from the main grid to individual properties. Live service supplies in Australia are nominally 230 volts for single-phase service, and up to 415 volts across multiple phases, enough to cause instant cardiac arrest and severe burns upon contact. When a property's power is cut off, the meter usually stops electricity from flowing into the house, but the wires above can still be live unless the utility fully shuts off the service at the main network connection. That morning, Tanya told her neighbor she was going to fix the power herself. She borrowed a set of household tools, including pliers and screwdrivers, from another tenant in her building, and retrieved an old reflective safety vest she had found at a worksite months earlier. The vest gave her an air of legitimacy, making witnesses assume she was an authorized contractor. She positioned an aluminum extension ladder against the pole around 11:30 in the morning. 3 neighbors saw Tanya climb the pole, wearing the reflective vest and carrying the tools in a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. Tanya had no electrical training, no insulated gloves, no safety harness, and no understanding of what she was attempting. The ladder itself was metal, creating an additional conduction risk. Tanya reached the service connection point approximately 30 feet above ground around noon. The moment her tool contacted the live multi-phase service line, a massive electrical current surged through her body. Witnesses described a sharp metallic crack consistent with an electrical arc, heard by nearby residents. Tanya's body went rigid, locked in tetanic contraction as electricity overrode her nervous system. The arc flash damaged the tool and broke her contact with the conductor, and she separated from the pole. She fell 30 feet straight down, striking the compacted dirt and gravel beside the ladder. 2 neighbors sprinted across immediately, but found her unconscious with severe visible burns on her right hand and forearm. Paramedics arrived within minutes following a neighbor's call, but Tanya showed no pulse or respiratory activity. She was declared deceased at the scene. The coroner determined death resulted from electrocution causing immediate cardiac arrest, compounded by catastrophic blunt force trauma from the fall, including skull fracture and internal bleeding. Authorities charged no one but referred the case to workplace safety authorities as a warning example. Her funeral was held at a small chapel in Brisbane, attended mostly by neighbors and a few distant relatives. Her social media accounts were deactivated at her parents' request. It was April 27, 2018. The residential district of Chamberí in Madrid, Spain, sat under a hazy afternoon sun. Rosa Delgado, a 34-year-old part-time reseller who had built a side income flipping goods online, was about to make a decision that would end her life in one of the most preventable ways imaginable. Rosa had earned a reputation among local delivery workers as confrontational and aggressive. Over the previous 18 months, she'd been accused by 3 separate courier services of intercepting packages meant for neighbors in her apartment complex. She denied everything, often screaming at drivers who questioned her, threatening to file complaints about their service. Online reselling had become Rosa's primary income after losing her retail job 2 years prior, and neighbors noticed increasing desperation in her behavior. Witness accounts said that she would loiter near building entrances during peak delivery hours, sometimes following couriers up stairwells. Property management had received multiple complaints, but without concrete proof, no action was taken against her lease. Package theft in urban Spanish apartment buildings had become increasingly common by 2018, and a handful of fringe delivery startups had begun quietly testing unauthorized drone drop-offs onto balconies and rooftops, despite such flights being prohibited over populated areas by Spanish aviation authorities. The practice remained rare, controversial, and highly visible when it occurred. Balconies in older Madrid buildings, particularly those constructed in the 1970s, featured decorative iron railings attached with mounting brackets that corroded over decades of exposure to rain and temperature fluctuations. These railings were never designed to bear significant weight or withstand climbing stress, serving purely aesthetic and light safety purposes. That afternoon, Rosa spotted a delivery drone placing a package on a 4th-floor balcony 3 units over from her 3rd-floor apartment. The building's CCTV system captured her emerging onto her own balcony at 3:42 in the afternoon, eyeing the package. The item sat clearly visible, a medium-sized box marked with a premium electronics retailer's logo. Rather than attempting to access it through legitimate means or simply ignoring it, Rosa made the catastrophic decision to climb between balconies. The horizontal distance was roughly 4 feet, with a 40-foot drop to the concrete courtyard below. Building surveillance showed Rosa stepping onto her balcony railing, testing her weight briefly before committing. She reached for the neighboring balcony's decorative ironwork, gripping the vertical bars with both hands. For approximately 3 seconds, she hung suspended between balconies, her feet searching for purchase on the adjoining ledge. The corroded embedded anchors securing the railing to the masonry had been weakening for years, hidden behind decorative plasterwork that concealed the rust eating through the metal anchors. The decorative ironwork was not rated to support lateral or bridging loads. The bracket failed completely. The entire decorative railing section separated from the wall with Rosa still gripping it. A courtyard-facing security camera mounted on the opposite facade captured her sudden disappearance from frame, showing only a grainy silhouette and a visible timestamp as she fell 4 stories, the heavy ironwork falling with her. A neighbor hanging laundry on the ground floor heard the impact and immediately called emergency services. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, finding Rosa unresponsive in the courtyard with the twisted railing beside her. The medical examiner's report stated she suffered multiple blunt force injuries, including severe spinal fractures, traumatic brain injury from skull impact, massive internal bleeding from ruptured liver and spleen, and crushed ribs that punctured both lungs. The injuries were immediately unsurvivable and consistent with death on impact. The CCTV footage became key evidence in the subsequent investigation. Authorities closed the case as accidental death resulting from criminal trespass attempt, with no criminal charges laid against the deceased. Building management inspected all exterior railings, finding 12 additional units with dangerously corroded mounts. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos, click here.